But what of tribalism in particular? Well, there are all different kinds of larger groups, collectives, that you might think an individual belongs to, that you might try to subordinate the individual to. The family, the nation, the race, all of humankind. What's special about tribes that gives rise to this idea of tribalism in particular? Well, first of all, tribe has a kind of connotation of primitiveness, right? You think of tribes of people rather than nations, rather than full developed societies. And there are two things I want to point out in that connection relevant to our thinking of tribalism. First of all, tribes are one of a number of competing tribes. You don't just have one tribe. There's tribes that are always one of several in opposition to each other. You could have, at least in theory, a type of collectivism in which all of humankind is one big harmonious collective that we're working for the good of, as opposed to my collective versus someone else's collective, which are in opposition. So for this more benevolent, universalist kind of connectivism, think of the John Lennon song Imagine, where he imagines a future where all of mankind will live as one, not one over here in opposition to the one over there, but all of mankind, right? As opposed to Marxism, which the Communist Manifesto begins by talking about how all of history has been a history of class struggle, right? One group against another. I think tribalism includes, over and above collectivism, the idea of collectives in contrast, in conflict with one another. And the other thing that it includes is the idea that the collectives are formed not by shared ideas, not by a bunch of people who got together because of their minds, because of some conclusion they reached that brought them together into this group, as we're maybe all brought here by certain conclusions we've reached, but rather by factors like who they were born to, where they were born, what language they were taught as a young person, by accidental, often perceptual level, historical factors. There may be many ideas that are shared by a tribe, but those ideas aren't what holds the tribe together. They're sort of pieties or totems that are repeated in the group and kind of you're expected to bow to, but you're not in the group first and foremost because of your allegiance to certain ideas. Rather, the ideas are seen as something you ought to subscribe to, you ought to mouth, you ought to follow, because you're part of this group, and these ideas are what people around here in this group say. The group is held together by accidental factors and by loyalties. Loyalties to the individuals, to the history, not loyalties to an idea. And I think